I was about to do my usual errand in the grocery when I witnessed how Karen abandons her kid in a parking lot to meet her Tinder match. Here's how it all went down. Growing up and living in our small town, there was a comforting predictability to life. Saturdays usually began with a trip to the farmer's market, where Mrs. Wilson showcased her giant sunflowers, and Mr. Henderson always had a new joke to share with anyone buying his fresh apples. Then, it would be on to the yard sales that popped up like clockwork, each family laying out their memories and trinkets for others to sift through. To end the day, whether it was raining or the sun painted the sky in golden hues, a trip to Scoops and Amp. Sweets was mandatory. Their triple chocolate fudge ice cream was the stuff of legends in town. But on one particular Saturday, as I was about to indulge in my usual weekend routines, I stumbled upon a sight that jolted me from my cozy familiarity. Karen, the talk of the town, was hurriedly leaving her young son in the parking lot. Now, to give you a clearer picture of Karen, she was somewhat of a local legend. While most of us were content in our routines, Karen always seemed to be chasing the next big thrill. Every time I saw her, she sported the latest fashion, even if it was just a trip to the post office. And then, there was her son, a quiet, doe-eyed boy, who seemed to carry the weight of the world on his tiny shoulders. I had just pulled into the parking lot of the local grocery store when next to me, Karen smoothly parked her silver sedan. As she turned off the ignition, I noticed her phone light up. She began typing rapidly, her face illuminated by the screen's glow. Every so often she'd giggle softly, almost like a smitten teenager reading a flirty text. Karen then glanced around, perhaps ensuring nobody was paying her much attention. She leaned into the back, probably reminding her son about the snacks she'd packed for him, or perhaps reassuring him she'd be back shortly. I squinted, trying to decipher what was happening. It seemed so out of the ordinary for her to be leaving him alone in the car. I thought she might just be dashing in to grab a carton of milk or some emergency item. But with every passing second and every new giggle from Karen, that theory started to feel less likely. But then, to my astonishment, Karen strutted across the parking lot, not toward the store, but in the opposite direction. My curiosity piqued. I decided to wait a moment before getting out of my car. I noticed her kid fidgeting in the back seat, eventually pulling out a small coloring book. Poor kid probably thought his mom would be right back. A few minutes later, a flashy red convertible pulled into the parking lot. The driver, a man probably in his early 30s with a slicked-back hairdo, was clearly waiting for someone. To my utter disbelief, Karen sashayed towards him, looking nervously over her shoulder before hopping into his car. They sped off, leaving a cloud of dust in their wake. I sat there, aghast. Did Karen seriously just leave her kid alone in a parking lot to meet someone from Tinder or whatever? I took a deep breath, deciding to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she'd be back in a few minutes. Nearly half an hour passed, and there was still no sign of Karen. Her kid started looking anxious, periodically glancing out the window and visibly holding back tears. That was it. I couldn't sit and watch any longer. I stepped out of my car and approached the kid's door. "Hey, buddy, is everything okay?" I asked gently, not wanting to scare him. He sniffled. "Mom said she'd be back soon, but it's been so long." My heart ached for him. "How about you come with me to the store, grab a candy bar or something while we wait for your mom?" Tommy hesitated for a moment, but eventually nodded. I grabbed his hand, and we walked into the store together. Inside, we were met with the concerned gaze of Mrs. Perry, the cashier. "Everything all right?" she inquired. Fighting back my anger toward Karen, I replied, "Just waiting on his mom. Thought we'd get a snack." After we picked out a chocolate bar, the kid and I settled on a bench outside the store. To distract him, I began a game of I Spy. As we were deeply engrossed in our game, the red convertible finally zoomed back into the parking lot. Karen emerged, her face red, looking flustered. The man from the convertible threw her a wave before speeding off. She quickly spotted her kid and rushed over. "Tommy, there you are. I was just—" She trailed off, seeing me sitting next to him. I stood up, struggling to keep my voice calm. "Karen, you can't just leave your kid alone like that." She quickly spotted her son and strode over with purpose. "Come on, we're going," she snapped without looking at me. I stood up, my voice quivering with disbelief. "Karen, you can't just leave him alone in a parking lot." She fixed her sunglasses with a flick and retorted, "I'm young and gorgeous, okay? I deserve some time for myself. Not everyone wants to be tied down all the time." I shook my head, trying to find the right words. "It's not about you wanting time for yourself. You left him alone, Karen. It's not safe," she scoffed. "He's fine. Look at him." Without waiting for a response, she took her son's hand, and they headed to their car. The boy glanced back at me, his eyes wide and uncertain. As I watched them drive away, a weight settled in my chest. The rest of the day passed in a blur, and by nightfall I found myself wrestling with a dilemma. Should I let it go or report the incident to the authorities? The safety of the boy was at stake, but so was the relationship between a mother and her child. The decision wasn't going to be an easy one. It's a tough situation, though. On one hand, you want to protect the child, but on the other hand, it's a delicate balance with the mother-child relationship. I hope they find a resolution that ensures the boy's safety without damaging that bond. I never expected that expressing my true feelings about my fiancé's sister would lead to the unraveling of our relationship. The tension grew between us as we clashed over her involvement in our wedding. And now, as I look back on the whirlwind of emotions and confessions, I can't help but wonder where it all went wrong. Here's how it all went down. This situation is literally ridiculous, but this whole thing has caused almost nuclear warfare across the family. I'm a 26-year-old woman, currently navigating the world of wedding planning and what comes with that territory. My fiancé Chris, who's also 26, has been by my side for the past 4 years. And through our journey together, I've gotten to know his family quite intimately, particularly his younger sister Lilac, who is 21. Chris and Lilac share an exceptionally tight bond, and to be honest, I get it. They've faced some truly challenging times in their past, their childhood being a rather traumatic one. This rough history forged a deep connection between them. They made a pact early on to always be there for each other, no matter where life took them. From the outside, it's endearing to see siblings share such a close relationship. However, when it comes to Lilac's personality, well, that's where things get tricky for me. She embodies the stereotypical image of a bubbly blonde, and it's not just an occasional thing. It's as though she's taken it upon herself to be the constant ray of sunshine in every situation. Lilac's charisma knows no bounds. She's always laughing, often giggling at the smallest things, and tends to act in a manner that, to me, seems more befitting of a teenager rather than a young adult. The pranks, for instance, are a staple between her and Chris. Sure, it's all in good fun, with Chris also partaking and pranking her back. But every time I witness their playful banter, I can't help but roll my eyes. It feels like I'm watching two kids rather than adults. Now, with the wedding on the horizon, there have been some decisions to make and, quite frankly, some challenges to navigate. One such challenge is the wedding party. While tradition might suggest having your fiancé's sister as a bridesmaid, I found myself wrestling with the idea. If Lilac were part of the bridal party, it would mean enduring her antics at pre-wedding events like my bachelorette party. I knew that might be too much for me to handle. The thought of her turning one of the most personal events of my life into one of her playful escapades just didn't sit well with me. Fast forward to when my fiancé asked me when I plan on asking Lilac to be a bridesmaid. The day had started off like any other. Chris and I were lounging on our sofa, lazily flipping through a wedding magazine. That's when he casually popped the question, "So, when were you thinking of asking Lilac to be a bridesmaid?" I hesitated, taking a deep breath. Actually, I wasn't planning on it." He looked at me puzzled. "What do you mean? She's my sister. I really want her to be a part of our big day." I knew this conversation wouldn't be easy. "Chris, I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. "I just don't see her being a part of my bridal party." He seemed taken aback. "If you don't include her, I'll make her a groomswoman. She needs to be there with us." I could feel the tension rising, and I snapped, "Chris, this is our wedding. Why can't I feel respected? I want to have a good time on our day." Chris's voice grew louder, matching my own. "I want to enjoy it too, and that means having my sister there with me." I couldn't hold back any longer. "Honestly, I've never been a fan of her antics. Just for once, can't we have a day that doesn't revolve around her?" His face turned a shade paler. Without a word, he stood up and walked into our guest room, slamming the door behind him. Moments later, my phone buzzed. A text from Lilac. My heart sank as I read it. "I respect your decision about the wedding party, but knowing how you really feel about me hurts." I hadn't wanted her to know. Not like this. But it seemed Chris had shared our spat with the family. Texts poured in, some supporting me, saying it was my day and I should enjoy it, while others criticized me for hurting Lilac's feelings. And through it all, Chris was noticeably distant, replying in monosyllables and avoiding eye contact. Yes, Lilac had been graceful about not being in the bridal party, but now the family was in turmoil. All this drama. And for what? Am I the jerk in here? To set the record straight, just because I dislike her personality doesn't mean I'm mean to her. Being around her drains my social energy, but I have never been unkind to her, nor did I want her to find out about my feelings, especially in this manner. I'm just very introverted, and our personalities clash. I don't want her at my bachelorette party because I want to fully enjoy it without feeling anxious the whole time due to her energetic nature. So back to the story, my fiancé and I had a conversation the next morning. However, our disagreement is still unresolved. He not only wants her to be a groomswoman, but also wants to ask her to be the best woman, the equivalent of a best man, but as a woman. This issue is still unresolved because I am not comfortable with it. The situation has become more stressful because the whole family has become involved, and they hold his sister in high regard. They interpreted what I said as a serious attack against her. A few days later he called me, he is currently staying at Lilac's, and asked if we could talk. I obliged, and it was a very difficult conversation, to say the least. I asked him to come home, but he rejected the idea. Firstly, he apologized for telling his family, saying it was a rash mistake he made in the heat of the moment. Then he said that if I wasn't willing to have her as a bridesmaid, it was unfair of me to ask him not to have her as his best woman. He stated that he was not willing to compromise his sister's role in our wedding. This made me cry, and I told him that I was tired of feeling second place next to another woman. I wanted to feel like he had my back as his future wife. This upset him, and he explained that as Lilac's big brother, he was also supposed to have her back when she needed him, especially when I was blindsiding him with hurtful information about her. He admitted that he did put Lilac first, and that he wouldn't stop because he raised her. He mentioned that he was willing to go to couples counseling, but he requested that I apologize to Lilac for what I said, and stop complaining about the fact that he wants her as his best woman. The call was filled with lots of tears, and we decided to give it a rest and talk again the next day to process everything. A few weeks have passed, and well, Chris and I aren't together anymore. After our blow-up, he went to crash at Lilac's place. Funny thing, in the midst of all this chaos, Lilac shot me a text. She genuinely apologized, saying she was sorry for any strain she might have indirectly caused between Chris and me, and for any unpleasantness from her family. It was a twist I hadn't expected. She invited me out for brunch the following day so we could talk things over, and it went well. The conversation was very long, so I just want to include the important points. I apologized to her for taking out my feelings on her because he is the one who allows her to disrespect our relationship, and she apologized for not coming directly to me to make sure I wasn't uncomfortable about anything that she was doing. I also said that while what I said was true, it was harsh, and I never wanted her to know how I felt. She told me I had nothing to apologize for and that she wasn't expecting me to like her. Just be kind to her. She also told me that if the wedding did continue, she would stay out of both bride-groom sides out of respect for my wishes. Like I mentioned at the start, Chris and I have officially called it quits. The last few days have been a whirlwind of emotions and confessions, culminating in a dinner that would decide the course of our future. I remember pulling into the restaurant parking lot that evening, my heart pounding. The venue was one of those cozy, dimly lit places we often frequented during happier times. I could see Chris already waiting, taking a deep breath every now and then as he nervously fidgeted with the menu. I walked in, and our eyes met. There was a palpable tension, but we both managed a weak smile. "Hey," he began, his voice sounding unusually soft. "Thanks for coming." I slid into the booth across from him. "Of course, Chris, we need to talk, and it's best to do it face to face." We placed our orders, but neither of us seemed to have an appetite. I decided to take the lead. "Chris, I've been thinking maybe we could consider postponing the wedding, perhaps even see a couples counselor." He sighed deeply and then nodded. "Before you say anything else, I want to apologize," he began. "Running to Lilac right after our fight wasn't fair to you. I should have handled it better." I nodded, appreciating his honesty. "Thank you, but what do you think about counseling?" He hesitated for a moment, looking down at his hands. "I've given it a lot of thought," he began. "I'm going to continue therapy to address my issues with Lilac and our trauma bond. But I don't think couples counseling is something I want for us." I blinked, taken aback. "Why?" Chris looked up, his eyes searching mine. "I love you genuinely, but even if I heal completely, I want someone by my side who embraces my family, especially Lilac the way I do. I don't think it's fair to either of us to settle for anything less than that." The weight of his words settled between us. I whispered, "So, what does this mean for us?" He reached across the table, holding my hand. "It means we both deserve better. I love you, but maybe we're not the right fit for each other." We sat in silence for a moment. He then added, "I don't want you to worry about the logistics. The engagement ring is yours to keep, and you can take your time moving out from our place. If 2 months isn't enough, just let me know." The drive home was a blur. The end of our journey together was marked by understanding, respect, and the bitter realization that love sometimes isn't enough. This obviously hurt a lot, so I've spent a lot of my time trying to heal and find an apartment. Yeah, this is an issue that they should have discussed before getting engaged. Hindsight is 20/20ths, but if he's constantly worrying over his adult sister instead of being able to enjoy his life when he's not around her, that's a huge sign that he's not yet able to take the next step and commit to being another person's life partner. First things first, let me say that I've never thought of myself as being discriminatory before. I had a gay friend in high school, and we made it through some tough times together. I never felt weird about him dating a guy, so all of this is coming out of nowhere. Alex has been my roommate for 1 year, and I pretty much knew up front about him being gay. At some point, we became friendly enough with each other that we could even joke about it, as in, sometimes he'll pretend to flirt with me, and I'll pretend to flirt back. I'm straight, and he knows that, but I don't feel threatened by him flirting with me. And he says most straight guys do. The problem started because of this. Alex brings guys home sometimes. At the start, I thought I was okay with it since it's really not my business who he sleeps with. He's usually discreet enough about it that I don't hear anything I wouldn't want to hear from anyone else. But for some reason, I've started feeling weird if I even see him with other guys. I don't know when it started, but one time that really sticks out to me is when I came home and saw him and some guy making out on the couch. I don't know how to describe what it was like to see that, except that, for a moment, I felt so bad I thought I was going to throw up. Alex was embarrassed. He didn't think I'd be back for a while, but I told him it was okay since I was embarrassed too. I felt bad for being as disgusted as I was, since there's no good reason for me to have a reaction like that. I thought maybe they just caught me by surprise and that's why I reacted so strongly. But it turned out it wasn't a one-time thing. After that, every time he has a guy over, not that often, but every once in a while, I just start feeling like crap and wishing that guy would leave. And I can't stop thinking about what these guys might have done to him even though I don't want to imagine that. It makes me really uncomfortable and grossed out. And these are just guys he fools around with. I don't know what I'd do if he ends up getting an actual boyfriend. Alex has been picking up on things, and honestly, it's putting a strain on our friendship. Just the other day, I got home and bumped into this dude leaving our place. He tried to strike up a chat, but I was super offish to him. I don't even remember what I said, but it wasn't great. The guy left, and Alex, sounding a bit ticked off, asked, "Dude, why were you acting like that?" Caught off guard, I mumbled, "I don't know." His face got all serious. "Is it because he's a guy? You got an issue with me seeing guys?" "Nah, it's not that," I replied. Alex looked even more annoyed. "Come on, man, I had to deal with you and your friend with benefits phase. You remember her, right? Watching you two sometimes made me cringe, and now you're acting weird about my love life?" Ugh, he was right. I did bring my FWB around when we first started living together. "Look, Alex," I began, "it was a long day, and I shouldn't have taken it out on your friend. I really don't care who you see." He didn't look convinced. "I'm gonna head over to a friend's for a bit. Need to clear my head." As he was heading out, he threw over his shoulder. "By the way, if I end up staying over at his place, you're cool with that, right?" I nodded. "Whatever you do outside is your business." But if I'm being honest, my gut twisted at that. Why did it bother me so much? He didn't show up later that night even though he was supposed to hang out with me and my sister. He's never blown me off before and it made me feel like crap. But part of it was my fault since I made him feel like I was judging him for sleeping with guys. Now he's acting like nothing happened, but I'm worried I might mess things up if it happens again. I want to keep him as a friend, but he'd be hurt if he knew that whenever I think about him with other guys, it disgusts me. How do I deal with this? I've never been homophobic, but I've suddenly developed some kind of homophobia where just the idea of my roommate's sex life makes me uncomfortable. And I don't react like this to other gay people either, it's just Alex. I don't know if this means I'm only okay with gay people as long as I'm not living with them or what. Does anyone else have experience with this? I want to get over myself and stop whatever this is, but if I can't, I'm going to have to leave since the last thing I want to do is hurt Alex. And if I stay here and keep automatically judging him for his lifestyle, that's what's going to happen. A few days later, I met up with my sister Laura and told her my problem. She called me an oblivious walnut and said it sounds like I have a crush on Alex. The same conclusion some of my friends have. Anyway, she talked me through it, and we confirmed I'm not as straight as I thought I was. She also pointed out something where I said the more I tried to reassure him I didn't mind who he slept with, the more he got upset. Also, how he brought my old friends with benefits situation into it. I just thought he was understandably mad with me for being a jerk, but Laura thought it sounded like maybe Alex wanted me to be jealous. We moved on from that topic pretty quickly though, since I couldn't really handle the implications of that when I just started to understand that I liked this guy. The next few days were mostly me sitting on my butt trying to wrap my head around everything. I was scared of messing up our friendship and losing him, but I was even more scared that I might just let this pass without saying anything and then he gets a boyfriend and I have to see him with another guy, etc. Because if that happened, I would probably have to end it anyway, since as we've established, I'm not great at dealing with him being with other guys. Probably could have planned it better, but I told him, right after a Tarantino marathon if anyone is interested, since nothing says romance like graphic violence. I told him I've been such a jerk because I was jealous. I don't think he got what I was getting at because he just laughed a little and said I didn't have to be jealous, since it wasn't like I'd have any trouble finding people to sleep with me. No clue how I explained it. It's a blur. Luckily, he saw how nervous I was, so he knew I was serious. We talked. Long story short, all that flirting was real, but Alex didn't have any hope of it going further because of me being an oblivious straight guy. so he's been trying to get over me. He laughed really hard when I told him about how I mistook my jealousy for homophobia, and he teased me by saying he'd never expected me to be the jealous type. Then again, we both ended up laughing a lot out of nervousness and awkwardness. I've never seen him like that before since he's usually pretty confident. In the end, we agreed to maybe try something out and we kissed. Never kissed anyone with a beard before, so interesting experience, but also really good. Plot twist. It turns out I don't have any problem with Alex kissing guys if it's me he's kissing. Since then, we've kind of been easing into the whole dating thing, I guess. I know this place is wary about roommate relationships, and I get why, but it's been great so far. We had our first proper date last weekend and it was incredible, though a bit weird since we've done that 1,000 times already, and this time, there was a new context. At home, we still do our normal thing, but sometimes we get distracted. Last night, I almost burned dinner because I had to kiss him and we got kind of carried away. Haha. We're taking the whole sex thing slow though, since I've never done anything with another guy before. I'm a little worried about coming out to my family and my other friends, especially since this is almost as new for me as it would be for them. My parents are very open-minded, and my mom especially loves Alex. But I have some more conservative family members on my dad's side, and I can already imagine them blaming Alex for turning me gay. They can also be pretty racist. Laura's boyfriend is Latino, so she knows all about that. And Alex is mixed. It's something to think about in the long term, I guess. Alex has said he doesn't expect me to jump out of the closet right away, but if we end up calling ourselves a couple, then I'm not going to keep him a secret or anything. So, we're trying. And I am not a homophobe, and nobody needed therapy. Honestly, I can't remember the last time I was this happy, and I never would have expected this when I made that first post. It's a good thing some of you picked up on the actual problem and tried to get it through to me despite me being an oblivious walnut. It is absolutely fine to get scared when something feels different, especially when it comes to exploring and understanding your own sexuality. But remember, there is nothing wrong with admitting your real sexuality and embracing who you truly are. Love is love, and finding happiness and acceptance within yourself is a beautiful journey. If you enjoyed today's stories, check out the other videos on your screen now. Submit your own stories at you'rethejerk.com. Subscribe now, or you're definitely the jerk.